And unfortunately, my experience there was often the primary objective of a congressional hearing was whether or not it would generate press coverage, media coverage. And so this hearing, as important as an issue it is when it comes to social media harming America's children, my fear is that this was a lot of political theater and grandstanding.
Yeah, I mean, this is an area that is emerging in terms of several key factors. What is the purview of the government to protect the children here? One of the things I think that's been established is that most of us feel like unrestricted access to social media is harmful. We're just now catching up, though, with peer-reviewed data.
Yeah.
We don't have much of that.
Yeah.
So
and sorry to interrupt you, but that's where Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Meta, went. Is he repeatedly claimed that there was no data to support the notion that social media harms kids.
But there are a lot of real people who can show real harm to individual families. And so this is where emerging policy is at a crossroads. So is it truthful? Yes, you have a real person with a real child who shows real harm. Often, though, to make policy, what you grapple with is, can you make and should you make government policy based on anecdotal, be it very true?
Yes.
Or do you need a large enough and longitudinal enough data sets? Now, here's where we've had this conversation often is in public health. Like, for how long does a drug need to be tested? How many people before it's proven safe for mass consumption? We're looking at the same issue. We're standing there seeing individual children where we can show harm to that individual child.
Yeah.
We don't yet have the data to support maybe what are best practices. But parents, all of our parents out there are saying, no, I can't sit by.
Yeah.
Utah's been very aggressive about wanting government intervention.
We've been the tip of the spear.
But what's interesting about that is our solution right now is governmental based. And we do cite tobacco in this interest, and tobacco's interesting because what ended up happening with tobacco was the educational programming. So yesterday, one key thing I will say that really struck me that I was glad to see is Mark Zuckerberg, among two others, stood up and apologized. So one of the things I think that has been bugging a lot of us is that they've never taken responsibility. As you remember when this issue first started raising its head and people were accusing them, the response from the tech industry, which I don't think was adequate, their response was essentially like, what are you talking about? It's not our problem.
A lot of denial.
Then they denied having an algorithm that targeted people because they had built the algorithm around promotion and sales, and I think it was an unintended. Nonetheless, it was an unacceptable consequence of what was happening to kids.
Yeah, well, again, you mentioned that Utah's legislature, Utah's governor, Spencer Cox, has been leading this effort. Really, Utah has been the tip of the spear, leading out on social media impacting our kids. And I wanted to refer to some great comments from Senator Mike McKell, who was on earlier this morning with Dave and Debbie here on KSL News Radio. He had some strong thoughts about what happened in Congress.
I hope Congress moves forward. I've read the Kids Online Safety Act. I think it's important. But, boy, we did a hearing about a year ago in Congress. We got the same sound bites. We didn't see anything change over the last year. I hope this is a positive step. I hope they're going to actually tackle the issue.
Yeah, Maura, I think the most really impactful thing Senator McKell said this morning was that talk is cheap. And that we need action on this very important issue. Certainly, Utah's legislature is working on this. Our state, Governor Cox, is working on this. Yet to see if Congress will follow through and do more than just talk about it.
Yeah, it's important that the federal government and the state government hold these public hearings to go on record both from the government side and the tech side.
Yeah, well, great conversation. Certainly an issue that we will watch and continue to follow as it develops here in Utah and nationally in Congress back in Washington, D.C. Speaking of Washington, D.C. and Congress, Maura, the junior senator from Utah, Mitt Romney, is about to step down, finishing his term. The race to replace Mitt Romney is heating up. We are going to get into that coming up here right after the break.
Now we know.
November 9th, 2024, BYU and Utah will play in Salt Lake City.
282 days until the rivalry game.
Touchdown, Cougars! Cougars!
282 days of anticipation.
And the Cougs are right back in it.
Hear about the key matchups and feel all the emotion on this station. We are Utah's legacy home for the Cougars, Big 12 football, and Rivalry Week. KSL News Radio.
Okay, that's good. Whoa, Dave!
Sorry, I'll go grab some paper towels.
You can't let Dave pour things. He works at JCW's. They fill stuff up past the brim over there, like their milkshakes. They're thick, rich, and oh my gosh.
Delicious?
Oh no, Dave's filling up Crystal's car for her.
Dave, stop!
Hey, this is Clark for JCW. Stop into any of our 5 locations today. We're located in American Fork, Thanksgiving Point, Provo, South Jordan, and our new location in Harriman. Come in and see why at JCW's we believe in quality and a lot of it.
Hey folks, it's Doug and Kathy with Window World.
Doug, can you believe it's been 20 years?
What's been 20 years?
Well, since we opened our first Window World store.
That is amazing. Our motto today is the same: quality products, professionally installed, backed up by our awesome warranty.
And our team shares those very same values.
Come see us today. We have stores in Murray and Spanish Fork for your convenience.
Experience the Window World difference. Call 801-281-8111 or visit windowworldutah.com.
And we promise no baloney.
Shoveling snow is back-breaking work. Maybe there's an easier way.
Which one do we try first?
Which one do you want to try first? KSL teams up with a pro to dig into the latest snow shovel options.
Do more in less time and go back inside home.
See which will save you time, money, and some back pain.
I kind of love it.
We've got the scoop on snow shovels tonight on KSL 5 News at 10.
We're going to get paid, right?
Yeah.
Valentine's Day is here. This year, give the ultimate gift. Name a star after your sweetheart. This is Rocky Moselle with International Star Registry. For 45 years, we've named millions of stars for celebrities, dignitaries, and individuals worldwide. For $59 and a call to 800-282-3333 or visit starregistry.com, you can give the most memorable gift. The star you name will be recorded in book form in the U.S. Copyright Office. Visit starregistry.com or call 800-282-3333.
The Angie's List you know and trust is now Angie, and we're so much more than just a list. We still connect you with top local pros and show you ratings and reviews, but now we also let you compare upfront prices on hundreds of projects and book a service instantly. We can even handle the rest of your project from start to finish. So remember, Angie's List is now Angie, and we're here to get your job done right. Get started at Angie.com. That's ANGI, or download the app today.
It's the Boat Show, February 1st through the 4th at Mountain America Expo.
Save $2 at UtahBoatShow.com.
The Boat Show, fun for the whole family.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, how much does it cost to put on a presidential debate? Well, the U is asking the legislature for $6.5 million. Second, for another $5 million, Utah could try out an early warning system for earthquakes. And third, police are investigating a string of shootings on freeways around Seattle. So far, nobody's been hurt. Right now, 57 degrees, mostly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to a special edition of Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio.
Special because we're hosting, Taylor.
That's right. Boyd Matheson is off today, and so you have Taylor Morgan and Maura Carabello hosting, filling in for Boyd Matheson. Maura, let's talk all about the race to replace Senator Mitt Romney, who is stepping down, retiring from public service at the end of the year. The race to fill that vacancy is heating up. It is a crowded field, Maura, and we have a new poll from the Deseret News and Hinckley Institute of Politics giving us the state of the landscape in that race.
So I want to remind listeners a little bit of our timeline. So if those of you who are driving along and reacted to Taylor saying heat it up and you're like, it is February 1st. Remember that primaries in Utah are in June. So that is when the election day is. June is a lot closer than November, right? So we're only a few months away. And June is going to be interesting because when you look at primaries, it is all about who shows up. So these early mojo moments, these early moments of like, who's getting 2, 3, 4 percentage points? they really start to affect how well a candidate can fundraise. So for those of you who are saying, wait, it's way too early to talk about this, we say if you want to be relevant in the Republican selection of our next U.S. Senator, our junior senator from Utah, now is the time that those voices are starting to be heard, those petitions are being made.
We have 16 candidates, Maura, who have filed for the U.S. Senate seat. The vast majority of them are Republicans. And as you said, this election is coming upon us. It will happen, listeners, a lot more quickly than you think. By the time we get to this primary election, some decisions may already be made by convention. Conventions will happen in April, state Republican, state Democratic conventions. We have multiple candidates in both major parties. Those fields could narrow slightly at convention or after.
If you're interested, you have something to do in March. If you want to caucus, you have conventions in April, and then you have this primary election. And we have the reporter who just wrote a terrific story about this with us. We're excited also that she's in studio. So Suzanne Bates is joining us. She is the national political editor for the Deseret News. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, what did you find in your reporting of this primary?
What we found was that it's wide open, right? I mean, 1 out of every 2 Republican voters say that they haven't decided who they're going to vote for yet. And, we saw the same thing last year when we had the 2nd Congressional District race, that people really didn't make up their minds till the last minute. And so it really is wide open. There's some candidates who sort of have emerged as early front runners, like Representative John Curtis, who's at 18%. Brad Wilson's at 8%. And then we have Brent Orrin Hatch, the son of Orrin Hatch, the late senator, who is also running. He's now at 14%.
Can I pause you there, Suzanne?
Yeah.
Because I pulled up Brent Orrin Hatch's candidate declaration. And indeed, he does use all 3 names, Brent Orrin Hatch. I think that's very smart and an intentional move. How much of his 14% do we just think is tied directly to the name Orrin Hatch?
I mean, probably a good chunk of it. I mean, he had a dad who was beloved, who was a senator for Utah for 42 years, who did a lot of amazing things. And so, I think, of course, he's going to say, look, it's my dad. Look, I haven't related to the guy. I've learned from the best.
Yeah,
right?
And I think it does demonstrate how early we are when it comes to the everyday Utah voter. That, Maura, you had mentioned this before during the break, that these are probably just name ID numbers, not support numbers quite yet.
Right. Let's talk about name recognition for a second, because it's really the talking point right now in this race. And you hear it when it relates to John Curtis. You hear it when it relates to a Speaker of the House. Speaker of the Houses are really interesting if you look historically, that the political class and the heavily involved citizens know them, and then their name ID just plummets when it comes to everyday voters, really. And so name ID is really, really critical. But here's the trick with name ID, at the risk of sounding like a cynical political consultant. Name ID is a byproduct often of money, meaning if I can communicate more, so money is communications in politics. And what we do know is there is a correlation, I mean, it sounds obvious when you say it, between more frequency and more recognition of name ID. Where you see this playing out in the retail world is you ask yourself why places like McDonald's and Burger King continue to advertise to us, because we're so a byproduct of what we're familiar with is what we gravitate towards. So when you see name ID, if you're running in one of these campaigns where you just have 2% or 8% or 6%, and you're afraid, what I would say to the voter is also look at how much money they have to raise, because that's going to allow them to build name ID through communications.
Yeah, no doubt. And we know that, for example, former Speaker of the Utah House, Brad Wilson, has been fundraising, lining up key endorsements for a very long time. He was very early in this race. So coming in perhaps at 8% is not something necessarily that he or his campaign should be discouraged about. Suzanne, in your reporting and reviewing these polling results, who do you think has the most upside? You mentioned that 1 in 2 Republican voters, and I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, Maura, but most likely whoever wins the Republican nomination will likely win the general election in November. Anything can happen, but if history holds true at the end of this year, that is likely the case. So which one of these many Republican candidates has the most potential upside, do you think, Suzanne?
I mean, I think John Curtis should be pleased with these numbers. I mean, I really do think those top three should be pleased with those numbers. But I also think, what you're talking about where it's fundraising. I mean, people are more likely to give you money if they think you're a winner, right? And then they also, then you can help set the narrative. If you have enough money, I mean, in setting the narrative in this race and also defining yourself and your opponent, I mean, they're all going to want to do that. I think there are also a couple of wild cards in this race, like does Donald Trump get involved and endorse someone? I think Trent Staggs, who's the mayor of Riverton, he's only polling at 3%, but he's very much been, he's been endorsed by Carrie Lake and some of these other Trump-adjacent figures, and I think he's really angling for that. Does Mike Lee get involved? I think that's unlikely, but you never know, right? If someone that could change up this race again.
Yeah. So as a reporter with your finger on this, where you're following it, are you seeing an uptick in the campaigns reaching out to you yet, or has that not quite happened?
Yes.
Okay.
Tell us about that.
I mean, people want very much to get their names out there. They very much want us to see all of the work that they're doing and report on that, of course, and then they're very interested in if we report on one of them, then you better report on me too. And, don't discount me. I mean, it was, when Brad Wilson and Mike Lee endorsed Donald Trump, there were a couple of other candidates, Brent Hatch and Carolyn Phippen, who let me know that they also endorsed him. I mean, this is important to them. They want people to know them. And so they're using every avenue they can. I don't blame them. They're using every avenue they can to try to get their name out there.
It is a practical problem, though, when you have double-digit candidates.
Yeah, 11 Republicans.
Yeah, that's amazing. Anything surprise you about these poll results or any observations as you dug into it?
I mean, so I would say, we poll using registered Republicans, not likely Republican voters, which sometimes can sway even 3-4%, So, but this does, I think, give us a good snapshot of where we are right now. But like you said, it's February 1st. I think voters are not that engaged. I will make a plea as someone who watches politics. The primary elections are your most important elections. And that's true across the board. That's true for Democrats, too. You go from many candidates to one. And by the general, you get like 2 or 3 candidates out there.
Yeah.
So those primary elections, that's where the real democracy happens. And so I hope people really engage this year in those primary elections.
One thing that I have found during the course of my career, so I've been doing something in public policy and political consulting for probably 30 years. And I really relate to sort of the apathy and the chaos that sometimes it feels like. But one of the things that I'm going to sound Pollyannish, but I have experienced it. The more you get into politics, the more you realize that individual votes matter. You don't get in and actually become cynical, as you're suggesting, Suzanne. You want a plea more that says, oh, my goodness, you may not feel like there's an impact, but your vote becomes enormously important, particularly the earlier you are in the process.
Yeah, and especially at a time when we have multiple open seats for Congress here in Utah. That doesn't come around very often, so certainly probably no time better to get involved in the process than now. So
I've loved this. Best race, biggest race we're going to see this year is going to be, for Utah, it's going to be a hot Senate
it is wide open,
primary. Suzanne Bates from the Deseret News, thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, Maura, coming up next, what seems to happen at the Utah legislature every year, regardless of what comes out of it?
I know the answer, so I'm going to say liquor laws.
Liquor laws. Listeners, we will talk about that right after the break. Stay here.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour. A state lawmaker asking for $5 million to install an early earthquake detection system in Utah. Representative Doug Owens wants to bring this in so that when we do get another earthquake, it gives most people and infrastructure at least a few seconds to brace for impact.
You imagine the value of bringing a fast-moving train to a halt, in those few seconds warning you've got. That could be the difference between a catastrophic loss of life with a high-speed derailment.
FEMA estimates a 7.0 magnitude quake on the Wasatch Front could do $80 billion in damage. Experts say having this system could help prevent some of that loss. Utah's governor will be traveling to Texas next week to look at the situation at the border with Mexico. Spencer Cox will join 14 other Republican governors on this trip, along with Utah Congressman John Curtis. Cox has called the situation at the border a disaster that continues to spiral out of control. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Investigators in Boise looking for answers after an aircraft hangar being built at the Boise airport collapsed on Wednesday night. ABC's Alex Stone has the latest.
Today, Boise firefighters can be seen looking around the twisted steel that buckled as a building came down. A crane came down with it. Boise police and OSHA are trying to piece together why the under-construction hangar collapsed. Still, some of the victims remain in critical condition. 3 were killed.
Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up strongly on the day, 346 points right now, and the NASDAQ up 198. And our KSL weather, we've got clouds. We're going to get some rain. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:32.
Here's a way to get breaking news updates anywhere you go.
At the store or in a work meeting, you can get breaking news on your phone.
You can quickly read it, swipe, or click for more. It's super discreet, super fast.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger, because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Do you find yourself stuck in a timeshare? Get the real facts about the timeshare industry and your options for cancellation. Chuck McDowell, founder of Wesley Financial Group, has put together a free information guide that reveals the secrets the timeshare industry doesn't want you to know, including the 5 ways to get rid of your timeshare. Call now and get this timeshare cancellation guide absolutely free.
Call 800-838-6161. That's 800-838-6161. 800-838-6161.
In this market, you'll find Fisher Investments is different than other money managers.
Different how? Aren't we all just looking for the hottest stocks?
Nope. We use diversified strategies to position our clients' portfolios for their long-term goals.
You don't just provide cookie-cutter portfolios?
No. We tailor our clients' portfolios to their goals and needs.
But you still sell investments that generate high commissions for you, right?
No, we don't sell commission-based products. We're a fiduciary, the highest standard of care for a financial advisor. It means we're obligated to act in our client's best interest.
So when do you make more money? Only when your clients make more money?
Yep, we have one transparent management fee structured so we do better when our clients do better.
Sounds like you really look out for your clients.
We do, because our priority is helping them achieve a comfortable retirement. That might be why most of our clients come from other money managers. Visit FisherInvestments.com to find out why investors like you switch to us. Fisher Investments. Clearly different money management.
Investments in securities involve the risk of loss.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Michelle Rowe.
Well, we're still running at posted speeds on the Valley freeways. We do have a little bit of slowing, though, in a couple of spots on Bangerter Highway, one around the 201 freeway and then southbound approaching 9800 South. I'm Michelle Rowe in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, cloudy skies and south wind today, then rain starting tonight and continuing on and off through the day tomorrow. We could see a foot of snow in Utah's northern mountains, as much as 2 feet in the south. And right now, 57 degrees, mostly cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Welcome back to Inside Sources. Today you have Maura, Carabello, and Taylor Morgan filling in for Boyd Matheson, who is away today. And Taylor, we were just talking about that we are in the midst of the 45-day legislative session that happens every year in Utah in January and February, sometimes a little bit of March. And with the new year comes new liquor laws, or at least new liquor law proposals. The floor of the legislature is starting to debate and discuss them. They're always a hot topic, and I am so happy to have this guest here today because we have a representative. He represents District 64, Representative Jeff Burton. He is a state lawmaker, and he is proposing one of, he's sort of, he may object to this, but a little bit of becoming an expert in this area. And not in consumption, but just in our liquor laws, which can be complicated.
Liquor expert, Representative Jeff Burton.
That's right. So Representative Burton, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, afternoon, everybody. Pleasure to be with you.
So I wanted to have you start by taking us through a bill that I know is going through the session. And the thing with our liquor laws is, they're often not as intense as people make them sound, but they are complicated for sure. So I'm going to start with a topic that I hear about the most, Representative, and it is quotas. How many licenses are available for restaurants and bars being two different categories of license? My understanding is they're allocated statewide, not by area, and that I always hear people complaining that we don't have enough. So is the legislature going to address the quota issue, and what's your perspective on it?
Yeah, very good question. Let me begin very quickly by saying Utah is an alcohol control state, which means we're one of those 17 or 18 states in the union that actually have the state involved in alcohol sales. The idea behind that is that alcohol should be available to those that want to procure it, but it's not an ordinary commodity. In other words, it has with it some social ramifications, and so we take the proceeds from the alcohol. We don't market or try to sell alcohol, but we do have the stores available. And so from that, we pump the proceeds back into the community where for prevention programs and enforcement programs and so forth. So to answer your question, we have struggled as our state has grown in population and demographic shifts and changes of thoughts and ideas on alcohol consumption. We have had a period of time where we've had not enough licenses, a period of scarcity. And that's one of the things we're trying to tackle this session.
Yeah, Representative, this is such an interesting and a difficult question because on one hand, indeed, our state is growing, and as is our alcohol consumption. Of course, we know that tourism is a huge driver of our economy here in Utah, and with tourism comes a demand for alcohol consumption, and it's been a challenge for restaurants and vendors to keep up with that demand with licensing. The other side of this coin, however, is the social impact of making alcohol more easily accessible in the state. How do you balance those two issues as you pursue addressing this?
Yeah, thanks, Boyd. Great question, and it is a challenge. We strive for balance, right, in all things. And so if we make more licenses available, the response back is then we enforce or actually fund more prevention programs, make sure there are more troopers out there to deal with any of the fallout, make sure there are some programs for addiction recovery and those types of things. And that's the beauty of being a control state, because if this was privatized, like happened in Washington State 10 years ago, you look at the data 10 years after Washington went from a control state to a private alcohol sales state, it's been a disaster with regard to social programs and the expense the taxpayers are having to handle now, as opposed to when the state ran the program. So, again, we try to balance it so that if we make it more readily available, we also have programs to counter the social impacts.
So I do want to ask a little clarifying question from the beginning on the state control part. It is my understanding, though, correct me if I'm wrong, that the state actually does mark up liquor. I think it marks it up about 87%. So the state is marking up liquor. They're not just providing sort of a service. And then in addition to that, the restaurant or the point of sale would also mark it up. Is that accurate?
That is accurate, and I think you can find that in every state. It's just the way it's done. And again, what we try to do is seek balance. If the state weren't involved in alcohol sales, it would be privatized, and then those profit margins would be going to individuals And essentially what happens is then all the social ills in society are paid for by taxpayers. And so it's a balance. We've looked at the other models that are out there, and we think this control model is the superior model, at least for taxpayers. And so, again, there are about 18 states that are in the control business. And to your point earlier, Utah's alcohol laws may be strange to some, but I've lived all over the country, and I can tell you they're a lot stranger in other places. For instance, one of the famous whiskeys, I won't mention the name, is made in a certain county. You can't buy it in that county, but it's made there. And so there are many laws out there that are strange. We just seek to keep Utah a safe place, but a place of freedom where people can obtain this commodity if they want to.
We're speaking with Representative Jeff Burton about legislation making its way through the House and the Senate this year that could address the shortage of alcohol licenses for bars and restaurants to keep up with the growing population in Utah, the growing demand for alcohol, certainly tied to not only population but to tourism. Representative, my understanding is that Utah's licenses are tied to a certain number of population. I believe it's one license per every 10,000 some odd people in an area geographically. Other states use a different number that is about half as large, about 5,000 population per license. Is the legislature looking at reducing the population numbers to increase the number of licenses, or what is the approach here?
Yeah, great question. We funded a study because, frankly, there is no data out there. We've looked nationally, and we can't find a state that can tell us how they arrived at their numbers, nor was there data when I entered the legislature here to determine how our numbers were established. And so we commissioned a study. The study came back several months ago, and it essentially was more focused on business and demographic changes. We also are using Kem Gardner Institute's numbers that indicate how much we're going to grow in the next 5 years. Population-wise, we think those numbers might even be, a little less than what's actually going to happen, a little conservative. So what we are talking about doing is very responsibly over a maybe 7-8 year period, slowly gradate the increase number of licenses. And the way we would do that, to be clear, is to drop the denominator. So maybe drop that number from 10,200 incrementally over a period of several years and come up with more licenses that way, but nothing reckless. The idea here is we're going to attempt this, and then if it doesn't look like it's working, we can adjust it year to year. That's one of the beautiful things about state government is if we make a boo-boo, we can fix it the next year. And so we feel like this is a prudent way to do it. It would just increase licenses year to year to the point that we'd get to this sweet spot. What many people may not know is we actually had people selling licenses, under the table because they were becoming such a valuable commodity. And that shouldn't be like that. We should have sufficient number so that there's not any of that nonsense going on, but not too many so that we're just giving them away helter-skelter. We want to be very prudent about the way we do this. So I hope I answered that question.
Yeah.
That was great. Representative Jeff Burton, thank you for your service, and thank you for joining us today on Inside Sources.
Thank you so much.
All right, been a pleasure. Have a good day.
You as well. So, interesting topic always comes up. What we should be watching for when the last big changes were made, it was because the Olympics were coming. Now, I don't want to take it for granted. I don't want to jinx it, but it looks like the Olympics are coming again.
Big changes coming, perhaps, when it comes to Utah's liquor laws.
Stay with us. We have one of the top leaders in our state, Speaker Mike Schultz, joining us for the next section.
Meet Aileen.
Hello.
Aileen suffers from FOMO.
Fear of missing out.
Missing out on her favorite KSL shows.
I really do.
Fear not, Aileen. Just bring up the podcast page at KSLNewsRadio.com. Utah's Morning News, Dave and Debbie, Boyd Matheson, and Jeff Kaplan are all there. Plus BYU Cougar Podcasts, The Movie Show, and more.
No more FOMO?
No more FOMO. When you can't listen live, we have you covered at KSLNewsRadio.com.
Have you heard of IRS tax code section 1.408A-4? It sounds complicated, but it's a simple tax law thousands of Utah families are using to lock in lower tax bills when they retire. If you've saved at least $200,000 for retirement, and some of this money is in an IRA or 401k, it could save you tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars in future tax bills. You can find out how much you could save by requesting a free and confidential retirement tax savings analysis. It's from Boss Retirement Solutions, a 5-time winner of Utah's Best of State Award. For your free retirement tax analysis, call 801-896-9622. 801-896-9622. That's 801-896-9622.
Advisory services offered through Boss Retirement Advisors, an SEC-registered investment advisory firm. Insurance products and services offered through Boss Retirement Solutions.
Do you enjoy fishing, hunting, or just soaking in the beautiful outdoors? Then check out the KSL Outdoor Show, airing Saturdays at 6:30 p.m. and midnight on KSL 5 TV. Outdoors with Adam Eagle is a unique show that takes viewers on a journey through Utah's beautiful backcountry. Watch it live every weekend or find the KSL Outdoor Show on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. It's the KSL Outdoor Show, brought to you by Camp Chef.
If you've ever set New Year's resolutions before, you know how difficult it is to follow through because you have to wait to see the results. What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and in honor of your New Year, New You resolutions, Any Hour Services is having our New Year, New System sale. From now until the end of February, Any Hour Services will give you $2,024 off a new furnace and air conditioner, and you don't have to wait to save the money. You get $2,024 off at the time of purchase. The only thing you have to do to qualify for our New Year, New System sale is call Any Hour Services and schedule a free estimate. When you call, there's no obligation to buy. Just schedule a time to meet that works best for you. Let me say that again. From now until the end of February, when you have Any Hour Services install a new furnace and air conditioner, we'll give you $2,024 off. Call Any Hour Services right now and schedule a free estimate. 801-443-7400. You can Google Any Hour Services. You can even schedule online at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
It's been all over the news.
Blood banks across the country are facing critical shortages.
The levels at Utah's blood banks are critical.
Right now, we're facing a critical shortage of blood.
KSL News Radio has teamed up with ARUP Blood Services in Sandy this February to help you find your perfect match. Listen for uplifting stories about the miracle of blood donation and learn how you can help save a life. Find your perfect match. Give blood. More details at kslnewsradio.com.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, if you had 17 seconds warning before an earthquake, what could you do to protect yourself? A Utah legislator wants to give you that chance. Second, Utah's governor will be traveling to the Mexican border next week to look at what he calls a national security issue that's out of control. And third, building inspectors are trying to figure out what led to the collapse of an aircraft hangar being built at the Boise airport. 3 people were killed, 9 others hurt. Right now, 57 degrees. It's mostly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources. This is a special edition without Boyd Matheson, who is away today. This is Taylor Morgan filling in for Boyd alongside Maura Carabello. Maura, great show so far. We have a lot to get into. Right now, we're going to cover, again, what has been happening on the Hill with the Utah legislature. We are in week 3 of the 2024 session. Maura, it has been Energy Week this week. I'm not just talking about the number of Red Bulls I've been drinking daily.
That's not just your characterization of the week.
No, but this is officially Energy Week on the Hill.
Yeah, it's, I think what Taylor is referring to is the State House of Representatives have announced that they are unveiling many of their key packages when it relates to issues related to our energy. Utah's an interesting state because we produce our own. There's been some criticism. We've had to tap into other sources. And the big debate is, how important to us is it that we still have our own energy sources? So far, the answer to that has been very important. And then as we double in population in the next, let's say, 40 years, how are we going to handle that? So we are lucky today to have the El Jefe of this policy topic, which is Speaker Mike Schultz, who is also the esteemed representative from Hooper, Utah.
You said that correctly. Well done.
Thank you. And so thank you, Speaker Schultz, for joining us today.
Maura, thank you for being here. I think I like El Jefe better than Speaker, so I'll take that.
Okay,
Absolutely.
fine. We can go with that. We can go with that all the time. So before we jump into the policy area of energy, I want to ask you, since we've got you on the live air, Speaker, how's the session going so far? This is your first year as Speaker of the House. What are you focused on? How's it going?
Well, hey, that's a great question, Maura. I really appreciate you asking. So, I think as every speaker comes into this role, they think, what are the things that they want to be known for, and what are their biggest policies? What are some of the things they're really trying to focus on and work on? Maura, I think right now we look at what's happening at the federal government and the dysfunction that's happening there, and I think that's forcing a big trust in government issue, and as it should, because I think we all look at that and say, do those people that represents us in Washington, do the majority of them have what's best in mind for the citizens of this nation? And because you see the dysfunction and the chaos that goes on back there, and you wonder really what's happened. And so as we came into the legislative session, and as I come in as a new speaker, I really want to focus on building some of that trust back. I want the citizens of this state to be able to look at the State House of Representatives in Utah and say that's a form of government, a body of government that I think really puts the people first. Because I'm here to tell you, we do. And these elected officials here at the legislature and certainly in the House of Representatives, I can tell you that we really focus on putting the citizens of this state first, and not just us, the adults, but also a focus on our kids and our grandkids, because we know the decisions that we make today don't only affect us, but they'll affect our kids and our grandkids down the line. And so we've tried to open things up more. We've, making sure that we have more time for debate, more time for committee hearings. Right now, more than ever, you can follow what's going on at le.utah.gov. You can get online, watch all the committees. And so we really want to be transparent and show the citizens of this state how government should work on behalf of the people and the kids. So it's been a great, and I think it's been well received so far. So thank you for asking that question.
Yeah, Speaker Schultz, I think that you might be the only person that mentions le.utah.gov more than Maura Carabello.
I do love our website.
It truly is so accessible, and listeners, you can really follow everything that's happening up on the Hill, so be sure to visit le.utah.gov. Speaker Schultz, let's get to energy policy now.
Yes.
You kind of drew a contrast with how Utah goes about its business relative to other states. We know that some other states are taking more radical approaches to energy. You and your colleagues have prioritized what you call an all-of-the-above approach to energy. What does that mean?
Well, so let me tell you, first off, Maura mentioned it a little bit about this, and it's not over the next 20 or 40 years, that we're going to be doubling our energy use. Population, yes, but because we are transitioning to more electric and less fossil fuels, our energy, our power use is going up, and our power use is expected to double over the next 20 years. At the same time, we have rules and regulations coming at us from the federal government and the Biden administration that are trying to shut down our most reliable energy sources. And in Utah, that's our coal-powered power plants that are producing that reliable energy. It produced the majority of the energy in this state, which, we certainly understand that we probably need to start transitioning away from that, but we don't have any options in front of us on how, because you can't permit nuclear. Natural gas, we can't get the permits. The federal government will not permit nuclear. And we can't get the natural gas lines across the federal lands because we can't get the permits to do that. So we don't have any other options for our base load power. So we can't shut down those facilities until we have other options. So I've been asking, then what? We can help offset some of those uses by wind, solar, and all those things, which we really are focused on, and we want to continue to grow that. But we can't rely on that solely because we don't have a way, there's not a way to store that energy. And the peak power use is from 4 to 8 o'clock at night when the sun isn't shining anyways. And so really we need to focus on maintaining and protecting our current power that we have as we transition over. And so that's what the focus really has been on, to make sure, because people don't think about it. They just flip on the lights and realize that, and the power comes on. They don't understand what's happening behind the scenes to make sure that we protect that. And that's why we're really focused on that.
So a couple of follow-ups to that. One is, if you have any ways that people can reduce their power. But two, I want to talk about, I want to be clear. I know a big priority for you is clean air. And so I know, so the challenge of the legislature is not that you love something and hate something. It's that you have equal values and they sometimes fight against each other. And coal is a hard sell in terms of cleaning our air quality. And again, I know you care about both. Where's the balancing act between keeping a reliable energy source in coal, but it kind of sometimes, and I know there's such a thing as clean coal, but that's a relative term. How do you protect our air quality and improve our air quality while trying to wean us into other forms of legacy power?
Great question, Maura. And two things. And I do have to start by saying this. Our power plants in the state of Utah are cleaner than almost any other power plant in the world, and and that really is the truth. And so that's important to know, and it's because of the type of coal we have and the way those are built. But let me come back to the main question, because I do care about our air quality. We have to care about our air quality. To show that we do care about our air quality is better today than it was even 10 years ago. And so we're continuing and we're heading in the right direction, but there's more that we still need to do. And that's where the all of the above approach comes in. We are looking at what we need to do to try to get the federal government to allow us to build a nuclear facility. We are making efforts to try to get the permits for natural gas, or create a pathway that we can get the permits for natural gas pipelines to reduce the reliance on coal and all those things. But what we're saying is we have to have a plan, and we have to have it in place before we just turn off the power plant. And the federal government, in all their wisdom, is going at it backwards. They're saying shut it down and then figure it out. Well, that's not going to work for the state of Utah, because we're going to have a problem when you flip on the lights and they don't flip on. So we're going to protect that and make sure.
Thank you for some time today, Speaker Schultz. We know you are back to back, and we appreciate your insight on Inside Sources.
Maura and Taylor, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
You too. Hey, Taylor, we're going to stay with the heavy topics. We're going to go into everybody's least and favorite, but we're going to talk about what the legislature is doing with our taxes. So stay tuned.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio,
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. Home prices across the nation are 40% higher than they were in 2020. Here in Utah, those prices expected to rise even further. Home sales in the state last year, though, were the lowest they've been since 2012 due to high interest rates. But with interest rates expected to decrease this year, Deanna Deavy with the Utah Association of Realtors says demand for homes will increase.
As you get more buyers coming onto the market, competing for a limited number of homes for sale, that will drive up prices.
Even with increasing prices, she says home sales are also expected to grow. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. European Union leaders have agreed to a $50 billion euro aid package for Ukraine. White House National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby says it's meant to help Ukrainians survive the war rather than fight it.
It's a financial aid package. It's not designed for security assistance. And it's certainly going to be welcome to the Ukrainian people, no question about it, because it'll help alleviate some of the financial strains that they're already under. And so, again, we welcome it. But it's not a substitute for American leadership when it comes to security assistance.
And President Biden and congressional Republicans still talking about, but haven't agreed on, an aid package for Ukraine and Israel. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average is up 369 points right now as we approach the close of trading. The NASDAQ is up 197 points. And our KSL weather. We're taking a turn to the back to winter, actually, in the next day or so. And that's coming up next. KSL News Time 2:02.
News doesn't just mean information or dates.
It's the story of our local history being told in real time.
Be a part of the story. This is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
We hope to be a part of your story. We have you covered on KSL News Radio.
At this time of year, isn't it great to have something to look forward to? There's something about January and February. You've just got to have that thing on the calendar you're so looking forward to. Might I recommend dinner at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse? Let's talk about Hotel Park City. That's where you're going to find Ruth's Chris Steakhouse up in Summit County. After a day of skiing, it is the perfect way to wrap up that perfect day at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. And then, of course, right in the heart of downtown Salt Lake City, we have a Ruth's Chris Steakhouse here as well, right in the middle of all the action. So whether it's a play, a ball game, whatever it might be, that delicious dinner, it's waiting for you at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. Plus, it's only fair to remind you that Valentine's Day now is just around the corner, and your sweetheart is going to love that amazing meal. Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, 275 Southwest Temple, and also Hotel Park City. The meal you're waiting for, it's waiting for you at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse.
The Utah Department of Health and Human Services wants to make sure people in Utah can live safe and healthy lives. To do that, they need to understand what services people can access in their communities and what barriers they face to accessing services where they live. For this survey, they want to hear from people in Utah, specifically people older than 60, adults with disabilities of any kind, or caregivers and service providers of older people or adults with a disability. The results will be sent to the Division of Aging and Adult Services so they can better meet the needs of people across the state of Utah. Take this survey at utahcommunitysurvey.com or by calling 800-293-1538, extension 1610. All information will remain anonymous. Again, that's utahcommunitysurvey.com or 800-293-1538, extension 1610. 800-293-1538, extension 1610.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Michelle Rowe.
Well, we have some busy traffic southbound I-15 just past the 90th South entrance to the freeway where a tractor trailer is stopped. It's on the right shoulder. Also, we have another tractor trailer. This is northbound I-15 right about 9400 South, not causing any delays. Michelle Rowe in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather. We'll see rain starting tonight, continuing on and off through the day tomorrow. And once you get up to higher elevations, you'll see snow up to a foot in Utah's northern mountains, as much as 2 feet in the south. Right now, 57 degrees and cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Welcome back to Inside Sources. Today you have Maura Carabello and Taylor Morgan here. Taylor and I both own public policy firms, and so our day job is not radio, but in fact public policy. And what comes up all the time, every time at the top of our list, well, maybe past education, is taxes.
Yes.
One of the things we know in the state of Utah is we're not really for them. I guess no one's for taxes, but a conservative state like Utah, we don't tolerate many like superfluous taxes. But then it brings up the question of what is a good tax, what's a bad tax.
There has been so much chatter about taxes this session. And this is on the heels of last session where we had a historically large budget surplus. Last year, the Utah legislature significantly reduced the state income tax rate.
That's right.
We know that the issue surrounding the sales tax on food has been one that the legislature has been grappling with, and citizens have been really pushing over the last several years.
Well, that's right. And the sales tax on food goes back and forth. One group pointing out that it's often disproportionately paid by those of low income, and it's a burden. Others say, no, we rely on it and it's local, and plus it includes visitors. And so it's always good to grab visitors' money and not ours to spend in Utah.
And it's a very broad, very low tax, and that's the most reliable kind of tax.
Right. And yet we also know, so, Taylor, you and I wanted to take this segment to just reflect back all the complaints I think we all feel about it. We are going to bring an expert in to help us shape this in the next segment. But what we do know is people tend to, from polling, we know that people tend to dislike taxes that they feel like are too long. And so I'm going to give you an example. Property tax. People don't like property tax because they think that it will never end and the government's just going to take more and more and more and more. And so we also love when property tax is cut. Well, the challenge with that is many tax specialists, many economic specialists will tell you, yeah, but as you said, it's reliable. And so we can all pay less. If everyone pays a little, it ends up being a lot. Now, let's talk about another category that I just don't think we discuss enough in Utah, which is the different names that taxes have. I'm being a little cheeky.
Okay,
but
I like it.
The legislature often says we are so anti-tax. I've heard people behind a podium at the state capitol say, well, I'm anti-tax, so that's why I'm supporting this user fee.
Let's call it something different.
User fee.
It's not a tax, it's a user fee.
Right. So just want to make sure that I have said out loud, user fees or taxes.
Is the sales tax on a loaf of bread not just a user fee for eating the bread?
We're being a little cheeky.
Yeah.
The other thing that has started to happen more and more in Utah, it often happens at the local level, but it's something for you tax hawks to watch out for. And they're called special service districts. So they could be infrastructure districts. They could be school districts. I'm not saying they're bad. I mean, I actually don't mind districts. So a lot of things. So we all know the school districts are a rare entity. It's a rare subsidiary entity of the state that can tax themselves.
Yeah.
They can go to the people. They can't raise it, but they can go to the citizens and raise school districts taxes. Well, that's a special service district. That's a district. You can also do them around developing areas. The cities can also institute an impact fee. So they could take an emerging area, anyone who develops in that area, they tax an impact fee, and that usually goes to new sewer, new gutter, new streets, new street lights, infrastructure that would be required growth.
Yeah, and listeners, stay with us, please, because the point here is there are so many ways in which you are taxed. And as we talk through this, Maura, perhaps getting back to the Utah legislature, we know that our Utah legislature is constitutionally required to balance its budget every year. The Utah legislature has a pool of revenue of tax dollars that they get to spend every year. And some of those funds, as we know, are limited by the Utah Constitution. And I'm specifically now talking about the state income tax.
Right. In
the Utah Constitution. We call it an earmark in the Constitution. It requires the state income tax to be paid, or that is paid, to go directly towards education
And a lot
funding.
of us forget that. So all of our income tax goes directly into a protected fund for education.
That's right. In addition to what taxes, listeners, you're paying in property or other kinds of taxes that go to the school districts, your state income tax goes to education.
But we're going to consider that, right? We're going to consider, the citizens will have a chance to consider whether they still like a designated education fund. And I think we're also considering whether we like a sales tax on food.
Yeah. And those two potentially, Maura, are going to be tied together.
Which makes it tricky, right?
On a ballot measure.
What if you like one, hate the other, don't like one? The legislature last year presented this, but they have done it where they're in connection. Now, they will tell you that is because when balancing the budget every year, not only does the amount of revenue they receive matter, but to Taylor's point, which bucket it goes into, how restricted that money is. And they're making the argument that the base budget or the collection of all taxes beyond the education fund is running short and that the education fund is running high.
And over the last few years at the Utah legislature, we have seen a dedicated effort, and critics, of course, will argue it's still not enough, and perhaps they're right. But regardless of where your opinion is, the legislature has made attempts to increase funding for public education here in Utah. And that really has set us up potentially to be in a place where the legislature is making an argument that they need more flexibility in how they can spend our money, Maura, so that they can adequately fund education. Do you buy that argument?
I don't know that I do yet.
Okay.
It requires me to put trust in a legislative body, and I struggle. I just struggle. I'll own my own baggage there, but I struggle.
And so you would have
trust.
concerns about removing that constitutional earmark because the fear, and not to put words in your mouth,
That's
but
right.
the fear could be that the legislature might then not adequately fund
because
education.
it would always be up to the discretion of the 104 people at that moment in time.
Correct.
And one of the things you did see happen is that they diversified. They got a little creative with the description of what the education fund can go to. And I mean, I guess I have some flexibility about describing
I like a little wiggle room.
A little wiggle room there. Yeah. Here's the other thing I'm going to throw down is that I'll own that I often am a participant in bonding exercises. Like we do a lot of general obligation bonds. We do raise.
Could you possibly
I'm
get
part
any
of the
nerdier,
problem.
Maura?
I'm part of the problem. I help tax you. But one of the things I want to point out about attitudes that are based on the political spectrum, it is in fact true from research, polling that I've seen, that usually Democrats actually are a little more open to taxation. Republicans, the more conservative you are, the less inclined you are to tax. But there's an exception to that. What I have found through research is that it's not that Republicans won't cooperatively put their hard-earned tax, the money in. It's that they don't trust that the tax will go to where it said it was. They think that an inefficient and an unsuccessful government will gobble it up for bureaucracy reasons. And you see that most happening in education. So if you've asked yourself why every year education is at the top of everybody's list, and yet we sometimes don't see movement, it's because we don't trust that the system will say what it does, which is why we actually like bonding in specific questions. Because I can ask you, hey, Taylor, do we all want a new rec center? We can say yes, and we know all of that money will have to go right to that rec center.
Yeah.
So it's not ideology that necessarily makes you anti-tax.
Yeah,
it's in fact, you don't trust the government to do what they say they're going to do.
And I don't trust the government to do what they say
It's
they're going to do with my money.
Absolutely fair position.
Yeah, no doubt.
We're going to bring into the next segment an expert into this discussion. We're also going to pinpoint some moves that are going on at the legislature. Are they good? Are they bad? We're going to get his opinion on it, so stay tuned.
Now we know.
November 9th, 2024, BYU and Utah will play in Salt Lake City.
282 days until the rivalry game.
Touchdown, Cougars!
282 days of anticipation.
And the Cougs are right back in it.
Hear about the key matchups and feel all the emotion on this station. We are Utah's legacy home for the Cougars, Big 12 football, and Rivalry Week. KSL News Radio.
When's the best time to plant a tree? It was 20 years ago. When's the second best time to plant a tree? It's now. I'm Jeff Jr. with Trajan Wealth, and I remember years ago being sent home from elementary school with a small tree in a styrofoam cup. I know some of you can relate. If that was planted, it's now bigger than you are. Your finances are the same way. The best time to get started, or the best time to get a second opinion, is now. And with time and patience, imagine how big your financial tree could be. 20 years ago, if you invested $1,000 in Apple stock, it could be worth over $500,000 today. That is a big tree. Do that for you and do that for someone you love. Call Trajan Wealth today and help us help you plant that financial tree. Call 801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600. Or visit TrajanWealth.com.
Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.
Shoveling snow is back-breaking work. Maybe there's an easier way.
Which one do we try first? Which one do you want to try first?
KSL teams up with a pro to dig into the latest snow shovel options.
Do more in less time and go back inside home.
See which will save you time, money, and some back pain.
Kind of love it.
We've got the scoop on snow shovels tonight on KSL 5 News at 10.
We're going to get paid, right? Yeah.
Hey, I'm Andy. If you don't know me, it's probably because I'm not famous. But I did start a men's grooming company called Harry's. The idea for Harry's came out of a frustrating experience I had buying razor blades. Most brands were overpriced, overdesigned, and out of touch. At Harry's, our approach is simple. Here's our secret. We make sharp, durable blades and sell them at honest prices for as low as $2 each. We care about quality so much that we do some crazy things, like buy a world-class German blade factory. Millions of guys have already made the switch to Harry's, so thank you if you're one of them. And if you're not, we hope you give us a try soon. Harry's is available online and in-store at a retailer near you. Get a $13 trial set for just $3 at harrys.com/news. That's harrys.com/news. Or check us out at your local Costco for a price you can't find anywhere else. Just look for the Chrome Razor with 13 blade refills at your local Costco. You can't miss it. Exclusive to Costco members.
Valentine's Day is here. This year, give the ultimate gift. Name a star after your sweetheart. This is Rocky Moselle with International Star Registry. For 45 years, we've named millions of stars for celebrities, dignitaries, and individuals worldwide. For $59 and a call to 800-282-3333 or visit starregistry.com, you can give the most memorable gift. The star you name will be recorded in book form in the U.S. Copyright Office. Visit starregistry.com or call 800-282-3333.
You can live out your MasterChef dreams when you find a professional on Angie to tackle your dream kitchen remodel. Connect with skilled professionals to get all your home projects done well. Inside to outside, repairs to renovations. Get started on the Angie app or visit Angie.com today. You can do this when you Angie that.
I had no idea what the world of cabinets might hold for me, but Euromax has opened my eyes to what cabinets should be. This is Hans Olsen, and I eat a lot of food. With that comes storing a lot of food, and Euromax has customized that for me. Deep shelves for extra storage, LED lights that come on as the door opens so I can eat at night, charging ports for phones or iPads, spice racks, elevated shelving for cans, glass fronts or specific color and texture fronts, deep pull-out drawers for pots and pans, and all of it waterproof and warranted for life. The perfect place to store my most prized possession, my food. Mike and Max have 35-plus combined years of experience from America to Europe to form the most unique blend of traditional American craftsmanship and authentic European design. You can head to their showroom in Pleasant Grove or check out all the possibilities at EuromaxFurniture.com. Sleek, elegant, innovative design, fashioned in Europe, and installed right here in Utah. That's EuromaxFurniture.com. Euromax, built for you.
It's the Boat Show, February 1st through the 4th at Mountain America Expo.
Save $2 at UtahBoatShow.com.
The Boat Show, fun for the whole family.
Mom and Dad used to argue about everything, especially about Dad's drinking. It drove me crazy. It got so bad, I couldn't do my homework. I couldn't concentrate. I absolutely refused to let any of my friends come to our house for any reason. I would have been humiliated if anyone found out how much my dad drank and how loud my mom screamed at him. My family went from totally crazy to quiet, calm, and even peaceful. The only thing that happened is my mom started going to Al-Anon family groups. Her relationship with my dad really changed. I asked Mom if she would take me to her Al-Anon meetings or to Alateen. I wanted to see if I could have a better relationship with my dad. I'm sure glad I did. If someone's drinking troubling you, you might be surprised at what you can learn in an Al-Anon or Alateen family group from people just like you. Call 1-888-4-ALANON or go to alanon.org.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, home sales have been slowing down, but home prices are still rising in Utah. Second, could Frontrunner reach Spanish Fork? Well, UTA is asking residents to weigh in on that possibility. And third, Ukraine's still waiting for aid from the United States, but the European Union has come through with a multi-billion-dollar package. Right now, 57 degrees, cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources. Today you have Maura, Carabello, and Taylor Morgan with you. And you know, Taylor, we left the last segment talking all things taxes, what we like about them, what we don't, what names they're called.
I don't think we like anything about them, Maura.
I don't. Well, you know, I'm going to own my tax and spending background.
Okay.
I like a good arts facility. I like a good directed tax. I like a good bond.
Okay.
And,
I enjoy those facilities when you pay for them.
I know
Thank
it.
you.
Don't. I know it. I'm a tax and spender. I'm going to own it. I'm going to be proud about it. But lots of unknown consequences. I don't think there's one of us who doesn't think the concept of cutting taxes and having government do more with less isn't sometimes a good one. But I think there's some unintended consequences. I think there's a lot of definitions. I think we're sometimes emotionally responsive and may end up paying more later. As we've talked about that, we decided also it wouldn't be a bad idea, Taylor, for you and I to bring in an expert.
Yes.
So we're going to stay with taxes. We're going to talk about what the legislature is doing. But now we want to welcome Steve Young, who is the chair of the State and Local Tax Committee, the tax section of the American Bar Association. He's also the past president of the tax section of the Utah State Bar and in the practice group leader for the tax group of Holland and Hart. We could not get anyone more qualified. Steve Young, thank you for joining us.
No problem. Happy to be here.
Thanks so much. And so you know, off the air, Taylor and I had a long debate, given that San Francisco and your name is Steve Young. We were going to try and do something funny about the Super Bowl, but good news is we knew it wouldn't work. So we're going to stick with taxes.
Yeah, I can pretend to be the MVP of Super Bowl 29 if you want me to be.
Yeah, throw that in.
It
throw
sounds
out
like
a
you've
score at the end.
had people make that bad joke before,
Okay.
Steve.
I want to start with something that's going on at the discussion going on at the legislature right now. We had an epic tax cut last year, and they're talking about another one. And from a learned perspective, while no one hates a tax cut, I've also heard people say, "Wow, is it too early to do a back-to-back just because you haven't had the chance to see what that has done to revenue modeling?" So walk us through, just from a non-political perspective, is it a good idea to consider back-to-back taxes? Does the time between them matter? What's your perspective?
Yeah, I think it sort of depends on your long-term faith in the economic model that lower taxes will improve your economy. That's really the play that Utah has been making. And if you look at the other states around the country that have that same sort of economic theory, that's where the people seem to be moving to. That's where the economy seems to be growing the most. Florida has no income tax. Texas, no income tax. Wyoming and Nevada are thriving with no income tax. And if you look at Arizona, they dropped their rate. It was similar to ours at 4.5%, and they had very good years and dropped it to 2.5%. And, you know, their economy continues to grow. So it's really just a play for future economic growth, and future economic growth gives rise to all ships, and that helps the poor, it helps the middle class, it helps the businesses, it gives people jobs. And so that's really the mindset to drop the income tax rate. And you look at, you know, many states around the country, and that's exactly what they've been doing. North Carolina recently went down to around 2 or 3%. People would like to get rid of it altogether, like Governor Cox has floated, because then that draws in all kinds of economic activity. But if you can't get rid of it altogether, which would be about a $7 billion hit, would have to raise our sales tax rate to 12% to get there. At least you can drop the rate as much as you can, and that's sort of what the legislature's been trying to do lately. And they can't do it all at once. They got to do it only as they can pay for it. So they started it, you know, back in 2018. Actually, they moved it from 5% down to 4.95, and then slowly down to 4.65. And this would just take it down more to 4.55. But I think that's the long-term plan, to get it down under 4. And so they're just doing that as much as they can each year. And I think it's really wise. Utah balances its budget. A lot of states don't. And so really all you can afford to do is a little bit each year. And you can only do it in the good years when you can afford to pay for it. In the down years where money's tight, nobody's going to be able to cut taxes. And so really this is the only time you can do it. And if we have sustained revenue surpluses like we have for the past, 4 years, then I think it's a good idea to do it if, you have good faith in your economy to continue to grow and for your lower tax rates, which send a message to the economy, bring in that new economic activity.
Yeah, we're speaking with Steve Young, chair of the State and Local Tax Committee of the tax section of the American Bar Association, the tax expert here in Utah, really. Steve, can you explain to our listeners and to me the difference between the state income tax and the state corporate tax? Are those rates currently different? Is the legislature exploring adjusting those rates independently? What is happening with those two different income tax rates here in Utah?
Great question. Back in the Governor Huntsman era, Governor Huntsman was the governor from 2005 to 2009. There was a very vast change in our income tax structure. We've always had the same rate for individuals and corporations, but we moved to a flat tax, dropped the rate from 7% to 5% back then, and it's been tied ever since. That's not the case in every state. A lot of states have different rates for corporate activity and individual activity. Utah tries to just have a very simple, straightforward flat tax rate. So it doesn't matter if you're a pass-through entity, you're a C corporation, you're going to pay the same tax. So there's not really gamesmanship that goes on. And, since that 5% rate came in, which has now dropped, over the last 4 years, that drop applies to every type of tax in Utah, every type of income tax in Utah. C corporation tax, pass-through entity tax, LLCs, LLPs, individuals that just, earn a salary and pay income tax, they all pay at that same rate, which is currently 4.65%. And the proposal at the legislature would drop that rate to 4.55%, and that would apply across the board to all income taxes in our state.
So I want to go into some specialized taxes. I'm going to do a two-part. Could you walk me through the pro-cons of mechanisms like user fees? I'm also unfairly going to throw in special districts, which are sort of geography-based tax assessments. What are the pro-cons of doing these smaller, whether it's that you're using whatever you're being taxed for, or whether it's a geography? What are the pro-cons of those kinds of tax tools?
That's a great question. User fees, as a general rule, from a pure tax policy perspective, make a lot of sense and are sound economically because you get people benefiting who are paying the fee. A great example is the carpool lane on I-15. Those who use it pay for it, and it brings in revenue, and they're willing to pay as much as they're willing to pay. So there's some accountability there. The con to user fees is that they have to be approved by the legislature, and a lot of political subdivisions of the state or local governments go out and try to impose user fees because they don't. The legislature is the only one that can impose taxes. And I think I said that backwards. The legislature has to impose taxes, and so therefore local jurisdictions cannot impose a tax unless the legislature gives them authority to. So what's happened is that a lot of the local jurisdictions have gone out and tried to impose user fees because they can't do taxes. For instance, Pleasant Grove City several years ago imposed a user fee for their road usage in their own city. And that was upheld by the Utah Supreme Court as being legal last year. And so the legislature now has a bill before it, HB 367, that would put a limit on the ability of local jurisdictions to just go out and willy-nilly impose user fees on whatever. Because the danger is that, a tax by definition is something that is applied generally and can be used by the government for any purpose. A user fee is something that has to go for the specific charge that it was made for. If you're making copies for somebody, you charge them a fee. That's great. If you're getting a driver's license, you charge a fee. That's great. If you're using the carpool lane, that's great. Those are all valid user fees. And if the legislature wants to go and impose a user fee, then it's all perfectly legal, and they could do, more of that statewide, and that would be acceptable. So user fees do have a great place and can be a really valuable tool.
Steve, I'm gonna have to cut you off because we're at time, but I just want to tell you how much I've enjoyed this. I've learned stuff, and we are going to make sure we bring you back because I think taxes, the more we know, the better informed we are, the more we can influence policy. So it doesn't feel like it's being done to us, that we're part of the decision. Again, Steve Young, who is the practice group leader for the tax group at Holland & Hart, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Speaking of taxes, Maura, stay right here, listeners, because coming up next, we are going to have a conversation with Senator Lincoln Fillmore about his proposal to pay public teachers up to $100,000 a year. Stay here. That's after the break.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour. Instead of white-knuckling it through traffic on I-15 to Spanish Fork, you might be able to read your book or catch up on a favorite show if a plan to build a front-runner station in Spanish Fork goes ahead. KSL News Radio's Hugo Ricard Bell has more.
Spanish Fork is looking for community input on a plan for growth around the proposed new front-runner station. The city has a survey up online for residents to have their say on the public transport expansion plan, which includes a number of options, but focuses in on the front-runner stop. Pollution has been a big talking point surrounding the sheer amount of traffic that travels on I-15, and increased access to public transport has been highlighted by experts as a potential way to improve air quality in the valley. Hugo Ricard Bell, KSL News.
Our top national story this hour from ABC News. In a surprise speech on the Senate floor today, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says details of a long-awaited bipartisan immigration deal. It's also linked to more funding for Ukraine and Israel will be released in the coming days.
Discussions are going well, so I want members to be aware that we plan to post the full text of the National Security Supplemental as early as tomorrow, no later than Sunday.
That's Chuck Schumer, the Democrat Majority Leader in the U.S. Senate. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average ending trading today 369 points higher. That's just under 1%. The NASDAQ was up 197 points, 1.3%. And the S&P 500 was up over 1%, 60 points today. And our KSL weather. Here come the clouds. By tonight, we'll see the rain. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:34.
You know what's great about KSL's traffic coverage? Trained traffic reporters and real listeners.
Trading information and making the commute safer and faster for everyone.
Every 10 minutes on the nines, we have you covered on KSL News Radio.
They say when you pick up one end of the stick, you pick up the other, and that's so true when starting a positive journey. Like what I've experienced is I've lost over 60 pounds in 4.5 months with Soda weight loss. Yeah, 60. When I finally committed to changing my health through Soda, which, by the way, is spelled S-O-T-A and stands for state of the art, I suddenly felt freed. From day one, I was no longer embarrassed about how my body looked, and I started resisting that urge to cover or camouflage it like anyone who's been overweight knows what I'm talking about. Why? Because I knew it was going to work, and I wasn't going to look like this for much longer. And I don't. Someone else who knows what I'm talking about is Rosie, a fellow Soda client like me. Rosie joined up with her mom, and now she's down 50 pounds.
I came back home from a 2-week trip, and everybody was like, in awe. They were like, wow, you look really great. You look terrific. You look completely different. I haven't turned into a new person, but I think I'm finding the best version of myself.
So make 2024 the year you finally let go of that weight for good. Go to SotaWeightLoss.com, S-O-T-A weightloss.com. Soda stands for, say it with me, state of the art.
2 years ago, Americans watched in horror as a crisis unfolded at the Kabul airport.
She was tear-gassed and beaten.
Images of thousands desperate to escape Taliban oppression filled our news feeds. More than 80,000 Afghans made it to America. But the story didn't end there.
It was very cold. There was no power, no heat.
Who would help our newest neighbors? I'm Andrea Smartin. In Stranger Becomes Neighbor, you'll hear the stories of some remarkable refugees who left their homes and their dreams behind, only to start over from zero.
Their only possession was 3 blankets.
And you'll meet Americans who stepped up to help them.
You want me to come when you deliver your baby.
What can one person do in the face of an international disaster decades in the making? That's Stranger Becomes Neighbor. Find us at kslpodcast.com. Follow us on Apple Podcasts or anywhere else you listen.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Michelle Rowe.
Well, we have a heads up for drivers. We have a hazmat situation at Walst Avenue and North Street in the Ogden-Harrisville area. Southbound traffic is closed, but both directions are affected. You might want to avoid that area. I'm Michelle Rowe in the KSL Traffic Center.
And our KSL weather, warm again today with cloudy skies and a south wind. But then the rain starts tonight, continues on and off through the day tomorrow. We could see a foot of snow in Utah's northern mountains and as much as 2 feet of snow in parts of the southern mountains. Right now, we're looking at 57 degrees, mostly cloudy skies. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Welcome back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio. Boyd Matheson is off today, filling in. I am Taylor Morgan alongside Maura Carabello. We are in week 3 of Utah's 2024 legislative session. And as always, education and education funding, teacher pay are key issues, really hot topics being discussed at every level in the Utah legislature. A new novel approach could potentially provide significant bonuses to Utah's public educators. Really, Maura, if you talk to any parent in Utah, they will rave about their teacher.
Yeah,
our kids'
we do
teachers
so well with what. Yeah, our
so
teachers
well,
are given.
so well. We can never really pay our teachers enough for the most important work that they do teaching our kids. They're truly the bedrock of a successful society.
Now, we have taken some steps to try and incrementally increase the pay and the competitiveness. But what I loved about your last sentence is what I really appreciate about this piece of legislation. It's a little inventive. It's a little novel. And I think that is what we need in order to keep up with the needs of the school systems.
Yeah. If Utah does anything really well, Maura, I would argue that it's innovation. We innovate well, particularly when it comes to public policy. And we know that attracting and retaining the best talent when it comes to our public teachers is a real issue. And we need to work on that. Senator Lincoln Fillmore has a new proposal that is making its way through the legislature this year that would use market-based incentives to help us attract and retain the best educators. Senator Fillmore, we want to welcome you to the program. Fill us in on this new approach to paying our teachers.
Hi, Taylor. It's good to be with you guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, always a pleasure.
Thanks. Senate Bill 173 is market-informed compensation for teachers. And it recognizes the fact that we have some excellent teachers in our state, but under current collective bargaining, they basically get paid the same as the mediocre or even below average teachers. And I think that hurts teacher retention because, really excellent teachers could be excellent at so many things. And, I think too many of those teachers move to different industries where they can be rewarded for their excellence. I just want to make sure that in schools, we reward the best performing teachers who are working in the hardest assignments where they can have the greatest impact. And I want those teachers to be earning $100,000 a year so that we're competitive with the job market and that every teacher who enters the profession knows that this can be a 6-figure career for me and I can support my family on it.
So, Senator, talk me through something I'm sure you've been spending a lot of time on. How do you define best performing teacher?
Yeah, I don't want to define that up here at the legislative level. And so my bill will empower local school districts and local principals to be able to make that decision and to be able to come up with a definition that includes both math and science teachers, but also art and music teachers and PE teachers and woodshop. All teachers that are excellent come in all shapes and sizes. They teach all kinds of different subjects. So it really is about empowering local school districts to be able to identify who is excellent in their schools and then to reward those teachers with massive bonuses so they can earn $100,000 a year.
Senator Fillmore, this sounds exciting. Have any other states attempted a similar approach to paying public teachers?
Yeah, as we were researching this, we found that a lot of states have tried this, including Utah in the past, and that most of those efforts have not succeeded, including previous efforts on this in Utah. But we did find some states that have done it. Most notably, I would say, is Texas. We're building a lot of this off of a model that they have there where, again, it's locally driven, locally controlled, but state funded to provide extra compensation for teachers that are identified inside their local schools as these rock star teachers and excellent teachers that can be mentors and that really make an impact in kids' lives and reward them with massive bonuses.
Senator, there is so much conversation right now around funding for public education and teacher pay tied to the conversation around Utah's taxes, the income tax rate, what's happening with the sales tax on food. All of these issues are ultimately tied together. How does your proposal fit into the overall picture of education funding in the state of Utah?
Yeah, you're right. There are a lot of really good education bills. That's not to say that all education bills are good, but I've been working with a group of like-minded legislators who are really focused on teacher retention and recruitment this year. And so we've got proposals to fund these bonuses so that high-quality, high-performing teachers can earn $100,000 a year. But there's also proposals to increase the pipeline by offering stipends to student teachers and proposals to make sure that teachers get maternity leave when they have children so that they can, take the break to care for their family and then come back to work and to make sure that all teachers are sufficiently rewarded. We're going to be putting hundreds of millions more into public education this year after record-setting years over the past few years. It's part of my job as the chair of the Public Education Budget Committee. We're really proud of the work we've done, and we're going to continue that work. And I think this teacher bonus piece is just one part of an overall investment that the legislature continues to make in the education.
So as you look ahead, we say this over and over again, and I'm asking you this because I know that you have had a history of thoughtful consideration, and the legislature always has an interesting challenge of doing the very best that they can for the year ahead, but then you also have done historically a terrific job looking ahead and not just doing it incrementally. So as you look at what we have coming in terms of growth, how does that impact your thinking? Do you look at the regions of growth? Because, there's some places that are losing some family units and some that are moving other places. How do you factor in population growth when you're making education considerations?
I'm glad you asked that. As you mentioned, we've been looking at this coming problem for quite a while, right? There are areas of the state that grow really fast and other areas where it's shrinking. And that has a real impact on individual districts' ability to fund things, right? So Salt Lake City is seeing their population decline. Their school-age population decline. Where I live in South Jordan, we're seeing our school-age population skyrocket. And so we've fixed that problem with a series of bills that I ran several years ago to equalize education funding so that the state is providing matching dollars for districts in the highest need. So what we're doing is taking school districts like Jordan and Alpine and Nebo and Davis, and we're growing education funding faster in those districts to take into account the fact that they're growing so fast that without that support, their per student spending in a given year might actually go down just because they have so many more students with the same tax base.
Senator Fillmore, what is next for this piece of legislation? It is Senate Bill 173, Market-Informed Compensation for Teachers. As we always like to mention, listeners, you can follow it at le.utah.gov. Senator, quickly, what is next for this proposal, and what do you expect to see?
So it's just been introduced, which I'm really excited about. It'll have its first committee hearing likely next week, I think on Thursday. I anticipate that it will pass committee, but that I'm still in ongoing negotiations. We need to figure out some of the procedural steps to get that going. So I'm currently, meeting with teachers and with the State Board of Education, as well as Rulemaking Authority, and with school districts to make sure that this is in place so that every school is empowered to reward their best teachers. And again, so that all of those high-quality, high-performing teachers who are teaching where they have the greatest impact can earn $100,000 a year.
Now, Senator, really quickly, full disclaimer here. I am wearing my lobbyist badge. I'm a registered lobbyist. I have it on here in the studio. So teachers out there who are excited about this idea, Senator, how could they lobby in support of it?
Or parents.
They should just, the best way I think is to just send an email or make a quick phone call to your representative in the state legislature. If you send an email, make sure to include your address so that they know it's from a constituent. Those kinds of emails are really informative to legislators up here. They carry so much more value, no offense, Taylor, than the badge that you're wearing around
It's
your
true.
neck.
That's why I asked. Yeah, that's why I asked. Definitely.
Yep, that's the best way. Just, we're all really accessible. I think all of our cell phone numbers are public. So just you can find the number and the email address for your legislator and just let them know how excited you are about the possibility of our state's best teachers earning $100,000 a year.
Senator Lincoln Fillmore, thank you so much for joining us here on Inside Sources. Thanks for your service, and best of luck to you for the rest of the session.
Thank you, guys. Good to be with you.
I think it's exciting to think of teachers being highly paid because, they deserve it.
No one deserves it more, Maura, especially they have to put up with my kids 5 days a week.
I've heard that.
Yes, definitely. Listeners, stay right here on KSL Inside Sources. We have a great conversation coming up that will wrap our show. You don't want to miss it right after the break.
Hi, I'm Henry Winkler. My eyes are very important to me. My eyes connect me with things I love. I loved my late father-in-law dearly. He always lit up a room, but his vision dimmed with age. He had age-related macular degeneration, or AMD. And since partnering with Apellis, I've learned there's an advanced form of the disease called geographic atrophy, or GA. His struggle with vision loss made me want to help others know about GA's warning signs. For some, straight lines seem wavy, like when looking at a door frame. For others, blurry or missing spots can make it hard to read or see loved ones' faces. Many have trouble seeing in low light, making driving at night difficult. GA gets worse over time and cannot be reversed. If you've been diagnosed with AMD and notice vision changes, don't wait. Talk to your eye doctor about GA today. Learn more at GAWon'tWait.com. That's GAWon'tWait.com.
The Management Minute is a service of the MBA program in the John M. Huntsman School of Business at Utah State University. I'm Professor Scott Hammond. The medical helicopter landed just 150 feet from the accident. The rural first responders had done all they could, but the urgency of the situation demanded greater expertise. So the A-team arrived. They calmly walked to the patient. They asked questions. They seamlessly provided care, then loaded and transported the critical patient. All in a day's work. Just one of 3 light calls that day. Teams that excel at critical situations teach us more about how to build our best work teams than the sports teams we watch and enjoy. The real world and real-time problem solving is more of a model than the plays and the points scored in a football or basketball game. Learn more about what makes a great work team in an MBA from Utah State University. Go to utahstatemba.com. That's utahstatemba.com. I'm Scott Hammond. Hope to see you in one of our classes.
If there's a problem during your siding, gutter, or window installation project, most contractors will try to hide it, ignore it, or blame someone else. It's called passing the buck or turning a blind eye, or my favorite, finger pointing. My question is, where is the accountability? Tim Jr. here from RGS Exteriors, and look, sometimes problems just happen, no matter who you hire. Maybe the wrong color siding gets delivered, despite the order being placed perfectly. Or maybe a downspout gets cut short. Honestly, it could be anything. At RGS Exteriors, mistakes are rare. But if something goes wrong, I can absolutely, positively, 100% guarantee you we'll never hide it, and we'll never pass the buck. We'll make certain everything turns out right for you. That's people over profits. That's the RGS Exteriors way. For a free estimate on siding, gutters, or windows, call 801-280-3110, rgsexteriors.com, rgsexteriors.com.
Do you enjoy fishing, hunting, or just soaking in the beautiful outdoors? Then check out the KSL Outdoor Show, airing Saturdays at 6:30 p.m. and midnight on KSL 5 TV. Outdoors with Adam Eagle is a unique show that takes viewers on a journey through Utah's beautiful backcountry. Watch it live every weekend or find the KSL Outdoor Show on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. It's the KSL Outdoor Show, brought to you by Camp Chef.
I'm not going to lie. It's nice when I see someone I haven't seen for a long time and they say, "Amanda, you've lost weight." I mean, that's nice. I lost 34 pounds a couple of years ago, and I've kept it off with the Soda Weight Loss program, sodaweightloss.com. Here is Rosie.
They always ask me what I'm doing, how much weight I've lost, like if there's any diet that I'm doing. And I'm really excited to tell them about the Soda program. It's one of those things that I think is worth every penny, especially when you're investing in your own health.
That is the way I look at it. It was an investment in myself.
It really is. And when you talk about the health side of it, being overweight leads to high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, arthritis, sleep apnea. The list is long. My daughter Amber, who lost 42 pounds, talks about how much better she feels, not just emotionally about herself, but physically, and being able to do some of the things she wasn't able to do before.
You know, my doctor used to tell me, you need to lose some weight, Amanda. I finally did with Soda Weight Loss.
Get it off and keep it off at Soda Weight Loss. Go to sodaweightloss.com, spelled SOTA, stands for state of the art.
Any Hour Services can help you make sure your furnace keeps you warm this winter. Whether you need a tune-up, a repair, or a second opinion about replacing it, call Any Hour Services or visit anyhourservices.com.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, Spanish Fork could be the next stop for UTA's frontrunner system. Second, along with the fact that there's no air and it's 250,000 miles away, NASA planners will have to take the possibility of moonquakes into account for upcoming missions. And third, the Senate Majority Leader says they're a step closer now to an agreement that resolves the standoff over immigration as well as aid to Ukraine and Israel. Right now, 57 degrees, mostly cloudy in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to a special edition of Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. Boyd is out today. My name is Taylor Morgan alongside Maura Carabello. We are filling in for Boyd Matheson today. We've had a great show so far. A lot of the show has been focused on the Utah legislature. We are in week 3 of the 2024 legislative session, and there is just a lot happening all the time, Maura. It feels like a constant, steady stream of breaking news.
Yeah.
And so you and I also host KSL at Night here on KSL News Radio. Typically, we are on Mondays and Wednesdays between 7 and 9 p.m. KSL at Night is every weeknight between
with a
7
great
and 9
new
p.m.
host.
We have excellent hosts, political insiders and experts. But one of the things that we like to do when we're hosting KSL at Night together, Maura, is really dive a little bit deeper into some of the topics that you and I just care a lot about.
Right.
And one of those topics is the right to pass or undo laws given to Utah voters by the state constitution.
That's right. And they show up being initiatives or referendums. So those are things that go right to the people for them to vote on. And we have quite a process in Utah. This right to do a ballot measure, do a ballot initiative, is in fact protected by the state constitution, which is not, it's a little unusual. Very few states have the right. Written into the Constitution said that the power is ultimately to the people, and that gets manifest by you can also go right there. But guess who gets to decide
here's the catch.
How you get on the ballot is the state legislature. They get to decide what the rules are that someone or a group that wanted to get on an initiative ballot, how they go about doing it.
Yeah.
And Taylor, as you and I both know, both of you and I have run initiative petition campaigns before. And it is one of the most onerous processes in the world. Now, I'm going to put an asterisk. I think that you and I both believe. Both you and I believe that it needs to be pretty hard. We don't want to be Colorado. We don't want to be Oregon. We don't want to be California. We don't believe that it should be commonplace that when we go to the ballot to vote in November, there are 15 ballot measures.
Right.
We don't think that that should be the stop of first resort. We think it should be the stop of last resort.
Yeah.
But this safety net that we have seen happen in Utah, where the legislature has refused to take up something, whether you're for or against it, but they're not addressing an issue that the population feels good about. It's really nice to have this alternative that says, well, then we'll talk about it ourselves. Now, it is really hard. It takes hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars.
Just under 135,000 signatures of Utah voters.
And a distribution requirement.
26 of 29 state Senate districts.
And a percentage of that population. And it has to happen in a very quick timeline, and you have to use the right paper, and the staples have to be in the right order. And I'm not even joking about that.
No, you're not.
There's pages and pages and pages of qualifications.
And there are requirements for those who collect those signatures. They have to be Utah residents. They have, like you pointed out, they have to follow a very specific protocol for providing information to the signers of that initiative.
So one could argue that while we have been given the right, we have the right protected in the Constitution, we also have made it, the legislature has made it adequately, many of us would say, too onerous, but nonetheless, it's onerous by design. You and I both want a pretty high test. We don't want to be balloting this way.
Agreed.
But there's a new resolution you and I wanted to talk about. And I'm going to, if you don't already know, listeners, where our position is, that I just really feel like having this protection in the Constitution where citizens can exercise that muscle if they choose to is so important. And this resolution erodes that protection. It's specific. It's specific to tax increments. And if you think, oh, well, wait a minute, it should be really much harder to pass anything that raises taxes, I would also just argue the old good for the goose, good for the gander. And remember that if the state legislature raises your taxes, they can do it in any normal session.
That's
so the
right.
proposal